The morning sun cast golden rays through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse office, painting shadows across the modern furniture and sleek decor. Tom Anderson stood by the window, his hand pressed against the cool glass as he watched the city come to life below. At just 32, he had everything most people dreamed of: a tech company worth billions, a beautiful home, and a wife who had stood by him since before his success. But something wasn't right. The weight of his wedding ring felt heavier with each passing day. As he turned back to his desk, his eyes fell on a photo taken 3 years ago. He and Anna were laughing on a beach in Maui, that head thrown back in joy as he splashed water at her. Those carefree days felt like a lifetime ago. Now, their conversations were brief, their dinners often silent, and their home felt more like a hotel where two strangers happened to cross paths. His phone buzzed with another message from his development team. They needed him for an emergency meeting about their latest product launch. Tom reached for his coffee, already cold and forgotten. This was his life now: endless meetings, constant decisions, and a company that demanded every ounce of his attention. He remembered the previous night's conversation with Anna. She had prepared a special dinner, lit candles, and waited for him. By the time he got home at 10 p.m., the food was cold, the candles were burned out, and her smile had faded. She had news to share, she said, but the moment didn't feel right anymore. "I'm pregnant," she had finally whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the city outside. The words should have brought joy. Instead, they sent a chill down his spine. A baby? Now? His company was at a crucial point. They were about to launch their biggest project yet, something that could revolutionize how people connect with technology. He couldn't divide his attention. He couldn't be the father a child deserved. As Tom sat in his ergonomic chair, worth more than some people's monthly salary, he scrolled through his calendar. Product launches, board meetings, international conferences. The next 6 months were already packed. Where would a baby fit into all this? His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Sir, the development team is waiting in conference room A." "I'll be there in 5, he replied, his voice steady despite the storm in his mind. But he didn't move. Instead, he opened his laptop and began typing an email to his personal lawyer. The words felt like betrayal with each keystroke, but he couldn't stop. He needed freedom. He needed focus. He needed... The phone on his desk rang. Anna's smiling face appeared on the screen. He let it ring once, twice, 3 times before answering. "Hey," he said, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Can we talk?" she asked. "About last night? About the baby? I know it's a lot to take in, but we've always wanted a family, and now..." "Anna," he cut her off, his heart racing. "I can't do this." The silence on the other end was deafening. "What do you mean?" Her voice trembled slightly. "I think..." He paused, looking at the city sprawled before him, his empire. "I think we need to separate." More silence. "Is this because of the baby?" she finally asked. "It's everything. The company needs me. We're about to change the world with this new technology. I can't be the husband you need. I can't be a father. Not now. Maybe not ever." He'd heard her take a sharp breath. "So that's it. After 8 years together, you're just done." "I'll make sure you're taken care of," he said, falling back on the only language he now truly understood: money. "The house, a generous settlement, anything you need." "Anything except you," she replied, her voice suddenly clear and strong. "You know what's funny? I used to tell everyone how proud I was of you. Not because of your success or the money, but because despite everything, you never lost your kind heart. I guess I was wrong about that too." The line went dead before he could respond. Tom sat there, staring at his phone, trying to convince himself this was the right decision. His lawyer would handle everything. Clean, simple, efficient, just like running his company. In a few months, this would all be behind him, and he could focus entirely on his vision, his goals, his future. He stood up, straightened his designer tie, and walked toward conference room A. As he pushed open the heavy door, greeted by the expectant faces of his team, he pushed down the nagging voice in his head that whispered he was making the biggest mistake of his life. The meeting began, and Tom dove into discussions about user interfaces and market strategies, never suspecting that at that very moment, in a doctor's office across town, Anna was receiving news that would change everything. News about not one heartbeat on the ultrasound monitor, but four. The autumn rain tapped gently against the hospital window as Anna sat alone in the ultrasound room, her hands trembling as she held the black and white images. 4 tiny heartbeats. 4 little lives growing inside her. The technician had left to get the doctor, leaving her with thoughts that spun like leaves in a storm. Quadruplets, she whispered to herself, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. Just 2 weeks ago, her biggest worry had been telling Tom about one baby. Now, as she sat in her loose-fitting sweater that still smelled faintly of their home, she was facing the reality of 4. Her phone lay silent on the chair beside her. No missed calls, no messages. Tom's lawyer had already sent the divorce papers, cold and efficient, just like everything else in his world now. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, still flat but holding so many secrets. I won't tell him, she decided, speaking to her unborn children. We'll be okay, just us. The door opened and her sister Kate walked in, still wearing her nurse's scrubs from the hospital where she worked. One look at Anna's face told her everything. The ultrasound showed something, didn't it? Kate asked, closing the door softly behind her. Anna handed her the images wordlessly. Kate's eyes widened as she counted 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my God, Kate breathed. Anna. I know, Anna smiled weakly. Looks like your spare bedroom is going to be a bit crowded. Kate sat down, still staring at the images. Have you told? No, Anna cut her off. And I won't. He made his choice. He wanted his freedom, his company, his perfect life. Well, he can have it. But honey, this is different. 4 babies. That's my family, Anna finished firmly. Our family. We don't need his money or his guilt. 2 days later, Anna stood in his luxury apartment one last time. The movers had already taken her boxes, loaded them into a truck bound for Seattle where Kate lived. As she walked through the spaces that had once felt like home, her footsteps echoed off the bare walls. She paused in her old art studio, where her illustrations had once covered every surface. A children's book lay forgotten on the desk, the last project she'd been working on before everything changed. Picking up the book, she ran her fingers over the colorful pages she'd created. A story about a little bird building its own nest. How fitting. A plan began forming in her mind. Seattle welcomed them with its typical gray skies and endless rain, but Anna found comfort in the change. Kate's cozy house in a quiet neighborhood felt more like home than the sterile penthouse ever had. Within a week, she transformed the spare bedroom into a small studio, her illustration materials spread out just as they had been before. The months that followed tested every ounce of her strength. Her belly grew faster than any normal pregnancy, drawing curious looks at the grocery store and concerned questions from neighbors. But Anna threw herself into her work, taking on more illustration projects than ever before. You should rest more, Kate would say, bringing her tea and cookies during late-night drawing sessions. I need to prepare, Anna would reply, sketching another whimsical character for a children's book. 4 babies aren't going to feed themselves. She built her client list carefully, making connections in the children's publishing world. Each book she illustrated brought in more work, more stability. By her 7th month, when walking became more of a waddle, she had enough regular clients to ensure a steady income. The day the babies arrived was chaos and wonder wrapped into one. 4 perfect little souls. 2 boys and 2 girls, each tiny but fighting. The NICU became her second home for 2 months, and Anna spent countless hours by their incubators, sketching their little faces and turning them into storybook characters. Look at this one, she'd tell them, holding up her sketchbook. This is going to be in my next book. A story about 4 little stars who shine brighter together. Slowly but surely, they grew stronger. First Michael came home, then Lisa, followed by Peter, and finally tiny Alice. Their first night all together in Kate's house, Anna sat in the nursery she'd painted herself, rocking Alice while the others slept peacefully in their cribs. We did it, she whispered. We're home. The years passed in a blur of first steps, first words, and countless illustrations. Anna's children's books gained popularity, especially her series about quadruplet stars having adventures in the night sky. She worked from home, turning the garage into a proper studio where she could keep an eye on the kids playing in the yard through the window. Each child developed their own personality. Michael with his quiet curiosity, Lisa and her boundless energy, Peter's creative spirit, and Alice's gentle soul. They filled the house with laughter, crayon drawings, and the kind of chaos that made Anna's heart swell with joy. She never looked up Tom's company online, never checked the business news. Her world had become these four precious lives, her art, and the peaceful life they'd built in Seattle. The divorce settlements sat untouched in a bank account, her own private victory in never needing to use it. But fate has a funny way of drawing circles, and as Anna's children grew, the universe was preparing to pull their carefully constructed world into the orbit of the father who had no idea they existed. The Seattle rain painted everything in soft grays and blues as Tom's taxi pulled up to a small art studio in a converted Victorian house. His heart was beating so fast he could hear it over the gentle patter of raindrops on his umbrella. After 6 years, he was about to see Anna again. The wooden steps creaked under his feet as he climbed to the front door. A cheerful sign read Starlight Studios, with illustrations of twinkling stars that he instantly recognized as Anna's style. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the door, setting off a small bell. The studio was warm and inviting, nothing like his sleek corporate offices. Children's illustrations covered the walls, whimsical animals, magical forests, and recurring characters from Anna's books. The air smelled like coffee and art supplies. "I'll be right there," a familiar voice called from the back room. Tom's stomach did a flip. Her voice hadn't changed at all. He heard papers shuffling, then footsteps. Anna emerged from behind a partition, wearing paint-splattered jeans and a loose sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was looking down at some sketches in her hands. "Sorry for the wait, how can I?" The papers slipped from her fingers as she looked up and recognized him. They scattered across the wooden floor like autumn leaves. Time seemed to freeze as they stared at each other. Tom noticed the small changes, a few strands of silver in her hair, laugh lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. But her eyes were the same warm brown he remembered. "Tom," she whispered, her hand gripping the edge of a nearby desk. "What are you?" Before either of them could say another word, the front door burst open. 4 6-year-olds tumbled in, their backpacks bouncing, rain boots squeaking on the floor. "Mom, Ms. Wilson let us paint with watercolors today," a little girl announced, holding up a damp piece of paper. Tom's world tilted on its axis as he took in the sight of them. 2 boys and 2 girls, all with dark hair like his, all with Anna's warm eyes. One of the boys had his chin, one of the girls had his nose, and they all had that familiar dimple when they smiled, the same one he saw in the mirror every morning. "Mom, I got an A on my math test," one of the boys said proudly, then noticed Tom. "Oh, hello." The children gathered around Anna, curious about the stranger in their mom's studio. Tom couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His mind was racing, doing the math, seeing his own features reflected back at him 4 times over. "Kids," Anna said, her voice remarkably steady, "why don't you go upstairs and start your homework? Aunt Kate should be there." "But Mom, we wanted to show you our art projects," the second little girl protested. "I'll come up in a few minutes, sweetie. I promise we'll look at everything then." The children filed up the stairs, chattering among themselves, completely unaware that they'd just met their father for the first time. Tom watched them go, his heart feeling like it might explode. When their footsteps faded, the silence in the studio was deafening. Tom looked at Anna, his mouth opening and closing, no words coming out. There he finally managed to whisper. "Yes," Anna said quietly. "They're yours, all 4 of them." Tom sank into a nearby chair, his legs no longer able to support him. "4," he repeated. "You were carrying 4 babies when you left," Anna finished for him. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked. Anna moved to her desk, putting some physical distance between them. "You made it very clear that you didn't want a family, that your company was more important. Would knowing there were 4 babies have changed anything?" The truth of her words hit him like a physical blow. He thought about the man he'd been 6 years ago, so focused on his empire that he'd thrown away the greatest gift life could offer. "Their names?" he asked softly. "Michael, Lisa, Peter, and Alice," Anna replied. "Michael loves building things. He can spend hours with his construction toys. Lisa's our artist. She's already filling sketchbooks just like I used to. Peter's fascinated by space and stars, which is partly why I started the Star series. And Alice, she's our quiet one, always watching and thinking." Tom listened, trying to commit every detail to memory, his heart aching for all the moments he'd missed. First steps, first words, first days of school, gone forever. "They're beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "They're perfect." "They are," Anna agreed. "And they're happy. They're loved. They have a good life." The unspoken question hung in the air between them. What right did he have to disrupt that life now? The sound of laughter drifted down from upstairs, and Tom closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the sound of his children, playing together. When he opened them again, tears were rolling down his cheeks. "I know I have no right to ask," he said quietly, "but please let me know them." Anna looked at him for a long moment, seeing not the powerful tech billionaire the world knew, but the man she'd once loved, finally facing the consequences of his choices. Upstairs, a small voice called down, "Mom, Alice needs help with her spelling words." The moment stretched between them, filled with 6 years of unspoken words and unexpected paths. Finally, Anna spoke. "We'll need to take this very slowly," she said, "for their sake." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. And for Tom, standing in that art studio with the sound of his children's laughter floating down from above, it was enough. It was a beginning. The hotel room felt too big and too small all at once. Tom paced back and forth, his expensive shoes wearing a path in the plushed carpet. His laptop sat open on the desk, showing a paused video from one of Anna's book launch events. He'd spent hours searching online, finding every piece of public information he could about the life he'd missed. The clock read 3:27 a.m., but sleep was impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces. Michael's serious expression as he talked about his math test. Lisa's proud smile as she showed off her painting. Peter's curious eyes taking in everything around him. Alice's shy wave as they headed upstairs. His children, his 4 beautiful, perfect children that he hadn't known existed until today. He stopped at the window, pressing his forehead against the cool glass. Below, Seattle's streets glistened with rain, the city lights reflecting in puddles like scattered stars. Stars like the ones in Anna's books, the books she'd written for their children. Pulling out his phone, he opened the e-book versions he bought hours ago. The dedication in the first book caught his eye. "For my 4 little stars who light up my world." He hadn't understood the significance when he'd first read it in his office days ago. Tom clicked play on another video, this one from an art gallery showing 3 years ago. The camera panned across Anna's illustrations, and there, in the background, he caught a glimpse of 4 toddlers playing in a corner of the gallery, watched over by a woman he now knew was Anna's sister Kate. 3 years, he whispered to the empty room. They were right there 3 years ago. He rewound the video, pausing on a frame where he could see them clearly. They would have been about 3 years old then. Michael was stacking blocks in the corner. Lisa was already drawing, her tiny hand clutching a crayon. Peter was looking up at one of the star paintings on the wall. Alice was half hidden behind Kate's legs, peeking out at the camera. Memories of that time flooded back. While his children were taking their first steps, he'd been launching his company's biggest product. When they'd said their first words, he'd been giving speeches at tech conferences. While they were starting press school, he'd been featured on magazine covers as one of the most successful young entrepreneurs in the world. "What a fool," he said to his reflection in the window. "What an absolute fool." His phone buzzed. Another message from his office about urgent meetings and decisions waiting for his input. For the first time in 6 years, he ignored it completely. Instead, he opened his web browser and began researching. Child development websites, parenting blogs, articles about raising multiples. He read about the unique bond between quadruplets, about the challenges and joys of raising 4 children the same age. Each article made his heart ache with the realization of what Anna had managed on her own. A new video notification popped up, one of Anna's recent interviews about her latest book. He clicked play immediately, hungry for any glimpse of the life he'd missed. "Your star characters are so authentic," the interviewer was saying. "How do you capture children's perspectives so well?" Anna's laugh was gentle. "Well, I have some excellent research assistants at home. My kids are always inspiring new stories." The camera caught her proud smile, and Tom remembered how that smile used to be directed at him. Now it was reserved for their children, the family she'd built without him. He opened his notes app and began typing, something he hadn't done since his early startup days. But instead of business plans, he wrote down everything he'd learned about his children from their brief meeting. Michael's A in math, Lisa's love of watercolors, Peter's space obsession, Alice's quiet nature. He added questions he wanted to ask, things he wanted to know. What were their favorite foods? What made them laugh? What scared them? What did they dream about? The list grew longer as the night wore on. Around 5 a.m., he found himself looking at real estate listings in Seattle. His company had offices all over the world. Why not here? But he stopped himself. Anna had said they needed to take things slowly, and she was right. He couldn't just burst into their lives and upend everything. As the first gray light of dawn crept into his room, Tom finally lay down on the bed, fully dressed. On his phone screen was a frame from the gallery video showing all 4 children. He stared at it until his eyes burned with tears. "I'm so sorry," he whispered to their frozen images. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. But I'm here now, if you'll let me be." The morning would bring more questions than answers. How would they tell the children? When would be the right time? How could he become part of their lives without disrupting the stable world Anna had built? But for now, in the quiet dawn, Tom let himself feel the full weight of what he'd discovered. The joy, the pain, the regret, and most of all, the overwhelming love for 4 small people who shared his dimpled smile. The park was quiet on this Tuesday afternoon, with just a few other families scattered across the playground. Tom sat on a bench, his usual perfectly pressed suit replaced by casual jeans and a sweater. Anna had suggested meeting here, neutral ground, she'd called it. "Mom, can we get ice cream after?" Lisa called out as she zoomed past on the swing. Anna, standing nearby, nodded with a smile. It had been 3 months since that day in the art studio. 3 months of careful steps forward, of building trust one moment at a time. To the children, he was still just Mr. Tom, a friend of their mums who happened to be really interested in their lives. Peter ran up to the bench, holding a toy rocket ship. "Look what I brought. Mom says you used to build model rockets when you were little too." Tom's heart swelled. Anna had been sharing small pieces of his history with them, preparing the ground gently. "I did," he smiled. "Want to know a cool fact about real rockets?" Peter's eyes lit up as he sat down, and Tom found himself explaining rocket science in 6-year-old terms, watching his son, absorb every word with wonder. From the corner of his eye, he saw Anna watching them, her expression soft. "Hey, we want to hear too," Michael called out, running over with Alice following quietly behind. Soon all 4 children were gathered around, asking questions and sharing their own space facts. These moments were precious, carefully planned yet feeling natural. Every week brought new discoveries. Michael loved building things, just like Tom had at his age. Lisa had inherited Anna's artistic talent and his determination. Peter could focus on topics that interested him for hours, while Alice observed everything with quiet wisdom. "Time for ice cream," Anna announced, and the children cheered. As they walked to the nearby ice cream shop, Tom fell into step beside Anna. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for telling them about the rockets." She nodded. "They should know where they come from. All of it, the good parts too." The ice cream shop was small and friendly, with bright colors and hand-painted signs. Each child ordered with their own unique style. Michael methodically considering all options, Lisa choosing the most colorful flavor, Peter getting vanilla because he read it was made from real vanilla beans, and Alice carefully requesting a small cup instead of a cone. Tom watched them, memorizing every detail. He'd missed so many firsts, but he was determined not to miss any more moments like this. Later that evening, after the ice cream and more playground time, the children were saying goodbye. "Will you come to our school science fair next week, Mr. Tom?" Michael asked hopefully. "I'm building a solar system model." Tom looked at Anna, who gave a slight nod. "I wouldn't miss it," he promised. As the children piled into Anna's car, Tom felt the familiar ache in his chest. Each goodbye was hard, but he knew this slow approach was right. His old self would have tried to fix everything immediately with grand gestures and expensive solutions, but these relationships needed time, patience, and genuine presence. Walking back to his hotel, he thought about the changes in his life. His company was still successful, but he'd delegated more responsibility to his capable team. He'd rented a small apartment in Seattle, nothing fancy, just a place where he could eventually have his children visit. His assistant had been reorganizing his schedule around school events and playground meetups instead of board meetings. That night, he sat at his hotel desk writing in his journal, something his therapist had suggested. He'd started therapy 2 months ago, determined to understand his past choices and become the father his children deserved. Today, Peter showed me his rocket, he wrote. He has the same look in his eyes that I had when Dad took me to the Air and Space Museum. Michael helped Lisa with her swing technique. He's already so protective of his sisters. Alice shared her ice cream with Peter when he dropped his. She did it so quietly, no fuss, just pure kindness. His phone buzzed with a message from Anna. The kids had a great time today. Alice asked if you could help her with her science project too. Tom smiled, typing back, I'd be honored. Whatever timeline works for everyone. Another message came through, a photo this time. The kids in their pajamas, showing off the space drawings they'd made after getting home. His eyes welled up at this simple glimpse into their evening routine. He added to his journal, I used to think success meant having my name on buildings and magazines. Now I know it's in the small moments, helping with science projects, sharing ice cream, explaining how rockets work. I'm learning to be a father, one day at a time. The Seattle rain started up again outside his window, but Tom didn't mind. This city, with its gray skies and gentle rain, had given him something far more precious than all the California sunshine he'd left behind. It had given him a chance to know his children, to earn a place in their lives, to learn what really matters. Tomorrow would bring more small steps, maybe a question about his childhood from one of the kids, another shared interest discovered, another bridge built between the life he'd chosen to leave and the one he was desperately hoping to be part of now. But for tonight, he had the memory of 4 small voices explaining their favorite ice cream flavors, and somehow that felt more valuable than any business deal he ever closed. The elementary school hallways buzzed with excitement as families gathered for the annual science fair. Colorful project boards lined the walls, and proud parents snapped photos of their children's work. Tom adjusted his tie nervously, not the expensive silk ones he wore to board meetings, but a fun one covered in planets and stars that Peter had helped him pick out. It had been a year since that rainy day in Anna's studio. A year of small steps, careful conversations, and gradual revelations. The children had known the truth for 3 months now, and each had processed it in their own way. Dad, come see my project. Michael's voice rang out across the gymnasium. The word Dad still felt new, like a gift every time he heard it. Tom followed the sound to find his son standing proudly next to a detailed model of a sustainable city, complete with working solar panels. This is incredible, Tom said, kneeling down to get a better look. Did you build all this yourself? Mom helped with the glue gun, Michael admitted. And Alice helped me write the presentation cards because her handwriting is neater. Speaking of Alice, she appeared quietly at Tom's side, tucking gently on his sleeve. My project is next door, she whispered. Will you come see it? Lead the way, sweetheart. In the next room, Alice's project about butterfly migration patterns was set up near Lisa's artistic display about color theory and Peter's detailed exploration of the solar system. 4 distinct projects that somehow perfectly captured each child's personality. They've been so excited to show you, Anna said, appearing beside him. She was wearing her paint-splattered artist's apron. She'd come straight from the studio where she was working on illustrations for her newest book. I still can't believe you did all of this alone for 6 years, Tom said softly. Anna watched as Peter enthusiastically explained the rings of Sechen to a group of judges. I wasn't alone. I had them. And Kate. And now? Now they have all of us, Tom finished. The past year had brought changes nobody could have predicted. Tom had moved his company's main research and development division to Seattle, taking a step back from day-to-day operations to focus on being present for his children. He bought a house just 10 minutes from Anna's, but not too big or flashy, a home where the kids could have their own rooms when they stayed over, with a backyard perfect for science experiments and art projects. Mom, Dad, Lisa called out. The judges are coming to my project next. They gathered around as Lisa explained how different colors could affect people's emotions. She'd inherited both Anna's artistic talent and Tom's gift for public speaking, commanding attention effortlessly. And that's why I think art is actually a kind of science too, she concluded confidently. The judges smiled and made notes, moving on to the next project. Tom felt his phone buzz, probably his office again. These days, he only dealt with the most important business decisions, and even those took a backseat to science fairs, art shows, and family dinners. Ready for the award ceremony? Anna asked the children as they gathered together. I don't care if I win, Peter declared. I just love space. That's the spirit, buddy, Tom smiled. Though I have to say, all your projects are pretty amazing. They found seats in the auditorium, the children bouncing with excitement. Tom looked around at other families and realized something. They didn't look that different from his own unusual family. Love came in all forms, and sometimes the most unexpected paths led to the most beautiful destinations. When Michael's name was called for first place in engineering, they all cheered. Lisa received honorable mention for creativity, Peter got the astronomy award, and Alice's butterfly project won the environmental science category. We're so proud of all of you, Anna said as they gathered for a group photo afterward. Tom watched through misty eyes as his 4 children posed with their certificates, making silly faces and laughing together. A year ago, he'd been a lonely billionaire with nothing but success to keep him company. Now he was something far more valuable, a father. Later that evening, as they all enjoyed celebration pizza at Anna's house, Tom watched his children share their favorite moments from the day. Michael was already planning next year's project. Lisa was drawing the funny expressions on the judges' faces. Peter was reading a space book he'd won as a prize. Alice was quietly making sure everyone had enough napkins. Thank you, he said to Anna as they cleaned up afterward, for giving me a chance to know them, to be their dad. She smiled, passing him a plate to dry. They make it easy to believe in second chances. Through the kitchen window, they could see all 4 children in the backyard, working together to launch a model rocket Peter had built with Tom's help. As it soared into the evening sky, their excited cheers filled the air. Tom realized that his true legacy wouldn't be the tech empire he'd built or the fortune he'd amassed. It would be in Michael's determined problem-solving, Lisa's creative spirit, Peter's endless curiosity, and Alice's gentle kindness. It would be in science fair projects and family dinners, in small moments and big celebrations, in the simple joy of being part of something bigger than himself, a family.